The mother left the child on the doorstep of a wealthy house. But when, 10 years later, she came to apply for a job as a housekeeper in that same house, she nearly choked upon seeing Jasmine was on cloud nine. Bruno had finally noticed her. For 2 years, she had been secretly in love with the most handsome guy in their faculty, and today he had approached her and suggested they go to the movies together. She told her friends everything, and they listened with envy and amazement. Jasmine felt proud that a guy like Bruno had chosen her. He was tall and good-looking, and he also came from a very wealthy family. Jasmine's parents were not well off, they could barely afford to pay for her studies. "It would be great if you started dating Bruno," one of Jasmine's friends said. "He's a football player and has lots of cute friends. Maybe we'll get lucky too." Jasmine just nodded in response. In her mind, she was already thinking about what to wear that evening. After coming home from lectures, Jasmine immediately rushed to her wardrobe and began sorting through her clothes. Nothing seemed right, jeans felt too simple for a date, and the sundress she had embroidered with sequins herself seemed too fancy. Finally, Jasmine noticed a short cherry-colored dress with puffed sleeves. She had always loved it and looked very cute in it. After thinking it over carefully, Jasmine decided to accessorize the dress with a gold tulip-shaped brooch and long, sparkly earrings. Pleased with her appearance, she pinned up her hair at the back of her head and put on sandals that matched the dress. Grabbing a small white clutch, she breezily left the house. Bruno was already waiting for her by the cinema. He brought her pink tulips wrapped in crinkling paper. Jasmine was delighted to see the flowers in his hands. She gladly inhaled their gentle fragrance. Bruno led her inside, and they chose a movie together. It was a funny romantic comedy, and they laughed heartily at the various amusing situations the main characters found themselves in. Afterward, Bruno walked Jasmine home. As they walked through the park, he took her hand and pulled her closer. Jasmine's heart raced when she felt Bruno's breath on her cheek. "I really like you," he said. "I like you too," Jasmine whispered in response. "Can I kiss you?" Bruno asked, and Jasmine nodded. Their kiss was long and passionate. Bruno ran his fingers through Jasmine's hair, and her hairpin fell to the ground. Melting in Bruno's warm embrace, Jasmine felt her knees trembling. "I don't want to let you go so soon," the guy whispered in her ear. "Let's go to my place. My parents aren't home today." Jasmine wanted to follow Bruno to the ends of the earth, but she remembered that her mother was waiting for her at home. "No, I need to go home," she said with difficulty, between Bruno's increasingly insistent kisses. "But I want to get to know you better," Bruno admitted. "Not today," Jasmine replied, pulling herself together and stepping back. They walked down the alley again, and after leaving the empty park, they headed up the street to Jasmine's house. Before saying goodbye, they kissed again, and Bruno wished her a good night. At home, Jasmine immediately took a shower and went to bed. However, she was too excited by what had happened between her and Bruno to fall asleep. She picked up her smartphone and texted her best friend, Diana, saying the evening had gone wonderfully. "Did anything happen between you two?" Diana asked. "He kissed me," Jasmine replied. "And that's all," her friend clarified. "He also said that he likes me," Jasmine wrote. "Congratulations, girl," Diana responded. "He also invited me to his place," Jasmine decided to add. "And did you go?" came the instant reply. "I went home because my parents were waiting for me," Jasmine confessed. "But did you want to?" Diana asked. "Of course, I like him a lot," Jasmine replied. "He's a great kisser. Be careful, girl. Don't rush things. You need to test his feelings," Diana wrote back. "Of course," Jasmine replied and smiled. She was sure Bruno was in love with her. In her mind, she was already imagining herself as his fiancé. With that image in her head, she fell asleep. However, her dreams were not destined to come true. The next day at university, Bruno approached Jasmine and said he wanted to introduce her to his parents. The girl was very surprised by such haste but agreed. "We have a country house with a pool that we go to every weekend. Would you like to come with us?" Bruno asked, lightly touching her hair. Jasmine was thrilled by the idea. "Of course, I'd love to," she replied. Bruno gave her a charming smile. "Then we'll pick you up on Saturday morning," he said. "Text me your address." Jasmine nodded, and after Bruno kissed her on the cheek, he left for his classes. The girl was overjoyed and immediately ran to tell her friends about Bruno's invitation. Everyone listened enthusiastically to the latest news, except Diana, who quietly shook her head. "Don't forget to be cautious, Jasmine," Diana repeated her words. "But his parents will be there," the girl responded carelessly. Still, Diana shrugged. "You should always be on guard." Jasmine rolled her eyes but said nothing. She was too happy to argue. Right now, the whole world seemed rosy to her. Jasmine eagerly awaited Saturday. She broke her piggy bank and bought a new swimsuit, as well as an outfit for the visit. She couldn't sleep that night from the excitement. Finally, morning arrived. Jasmine had breakfast, and then Bruno called, saying they were on their way to her house. The girl quickly hugged her mother and father, grabbed her bag, and ran out of the house. Bruno's parents' Jeep was parked at the gate. Jasmine approached shyly. The back seat door opened, and Bruno stepped out to meet her. He kissed her on the cheek, took her bag, and helped her get in. Bruno then introduced her to his parents, who turned out to be down-to-earth and friendly people. Jasmine quickly relaxed in the pleasant company. The drive took about an hour. When the car stopped, Jasmine saw a large mansion behind a wrought iron fence, painted a soft yellow. The grounds were filled with tall trees that provided pleasant shade. In front of the house was a lagoon-shaped pool with inviting bright turquoise water. "What a wonderful place!" Jasmine exclaimed in admiration. "Yes, we love it too," Bruno's mother replied. "It's a true oasis of peace and quiet." "Come on, Jasmine," Bruno said. "I'll show you the house and your room." When they entered, Jasmine saw that the house was furnished with antique furniture and decorated with hand-painted ceramics and picturesque paintings. The windows stretched down to the floor, making the rooms bright and cheerful. In the living room, Jasmine noticed a large stone fireplace and big bookshelves full of books. "Do you like to read?" the girl asked Bruno. He just shrugged in response. "Not really. They're all my father's books," he admitted. They went upstairs, and Bruno showed Jasmine her room. It was small but cozy. The lavender wallpaper gave a sense of comfort and tranquility. A wide bed was covered with a soft white bedspread. "My room is right across from yours," Bruno whispered in her ear, hugging her. "So, call me if you need anything." Jasmine blushed and smiled, and Bruno kissed her. "Bruno." "Jasmine." "Are you upstairs?" They heard his mother's voice. "Let's have a snack. Your father and I are starving." Jasmine pulled away from Bruno, and he shouted back, "So are we." "We're coming down." Taking her hand, he led her downstairs. Bruno's mother was already setting the table. Jasmine helped her cut cheese, tomatoes, and other vegetables. Bruno's father quickly made homemade lemonade, while Bruno took out pastries and a banana cake from a bag. Only then did Jasmine realize how hungry she was. The meal passed in a relaxed atmosphere. Everyone felt at ease and had fun. After everyone had a snack, the parents suggested that the young people go for a swim in the pool. Jasmine went to her room to change. She put on her new swimsuit and critically examined herself in the mirror. The swimsuit perfectly highlighted her tan skin. Jasmine nodded approvingly at her reflection and went downstairs. Bruno gave her a look of admiration and, taking her hand, led her to the pool. They swam and dived for a long time, then relaxed on the lounge chairs by the water. Bruno's parents excused themselves, saying they wanted to rest a bit, and went upstairs. Bruno sat on Jasmine's lounge chair and took her hand. "You're very beautiful," he said and kissed her. Jasmine felt dizzy, quickly pulled away from Bruno's embrace, and jumped into the water. "Oh, really?" Bruno playfully shouted and followed her. They played and splashed water at each other for a long time, then kissed again. Later, Jasmine suggested they prepare dinner for everyone, and Bruno happily agreed. They worked well together, and within an hour, the kitchen was filled with such mouth-watering aromas that Bruno's parents couldn't stay away for long. "Wow!" Bruno's mother smiled when she saw the set table. "Surprise!" the young couple exclaimed in unison. "I love surprises like these," Bruno's father said. Everyone laughed and eagerly dug into the food. Jasmine found herself thinking that she felt very comfortable with this family and the boy she liked. She once again imagined herself as Bruno's fiancée, and then as his wife. "I'll be very happy with him," she thought. As evening fell, everyone went out to the veranda, and Bruno's father brought out a guitar. It turned out that he played and sang quite well. Jasmine enjoyed listening to familiar songs in this new rendition, and she felt so cozy that she didn't want to think about the fact that it would all have to end someday. The evening flew by quickly, and night came. Bruno's parents wished the young people good night and went upstairs. Jasmine stood up. "I think I'll go to bed too," she said. "So soon?" Bruno raised his eyebrows in surprise. It was such an eventful day. "I'm full of impressions," she admitted. "But the night is just beginning," Bruno smiled, standing up and pulling her close. He kissed Jasmine, and their kiss seemed to last an eternity. "We could go for another swim," Bruno quietly suggested. "No, I'm very tired," the girl replied. Bruno nodded. "All right, I'll walk you upstairs." They went up the stairs, and Bruno kissed Jasmine at her room's door. "Good night," she whispered. Bruno nodded silently again, and his eyes glimmered suspiciously. Jasmine entered the room and closed the door behind her. She changed into a nightgown and lay down. The sheets were cool, and she closed her eyes with pleasure. She was thinking about the wonderful day she had had when there was a quiet knock at the door. Jasmine got up and opened it. Bruno was standing there. "Can I come in?" he whispered softly. Jasmine didn't know how to refuse him. Bruno entered the room and closed the door behind him. Then he approached her and kissed her passionately. "Keep me warm tonight, Jasmine," he whispered in her ear. Jasmine wanted to pull away, but Bruno kissed her more insistently and passionately. She could no longer resist him or her own desires. Bruno pushed her onto the bed and began undressing her. That night, the young couple didn't close their eyes until just before dawn. When Jasmine woke up, Bruno was already gone. She got up, feeling unsteady, and looked at herself in the mirror. She was still the same Jasmine, but something had changed in her. Bruno was the first boy she had spent the night with. Jasmine smiled and saw that her face was glowing with happiness. She got dressed and went downstairs. Bruno and his parents had already prepared breakfast. The second day went just as well as the first. They swam in the pool again, sunbathed, and sang songs with the guitar, and in the evening, they drove home. When the car arrived at Jasmine's house, Bruno helped her carry her bag and kissed her goodbye. "See you tomorrow," he whispered. The next day they met at the university, and Bruno took Jasmine's hand in front of everyone. They were now officially the couple. Jasmine was very happy. They went to movies and cafes, walked in the park, and on weekends went to the country house with Bruno's parents. Everything was wonderful, but one day Jasmine noticed that she was frequently nauseous in the mornings. Her overall condition was also not great. She constantly felt tired and sleepy. "What's wrong with me? Maybe I need more vitamins," she wondered. Some more time passed, and Jasmine realized that she hadn't had her period for a while. Panicking, she decided to buy a pregnancy test, and it came back positive. She was pregnant. Realizing this, Jasmine became frightened. She didn't know what to do and was very scared to tell her mother. Her mother knew that she was dating Bruno but had no idea they had been intimate. Jasmine was completely desperate and decided to confide in Diana. She had always been able to support her in difficult times. This time, Diana looked at her friend for a long moment without saying anything. Then she sighed and said that she had warned her. "But what should I do now, Diana?" Jasmine almost cried out. Diana hugged her and suggested that she tell Bruno everything. "He's the father of the child, and you both need to decide on this together," she said reasonably. "I'm so scared to tell him," Jasmine replied. "You'll have to," Diana said firmly. "And you'll see how he really feels about you." Jasmine nodded and took a deep breath. At their next meeting, she would definitely tell Bruno everything. The next day, Bruno invited Jasmine for a walk in the park. They sat on one of the secluded benches, and Bruno started kissing her. "Wait a minute," she said, pulling away. "What's wrong?" Bruno asked, puzzled. "I need to tell you something," Jasmine replied. "Then say it quickly," Bruno smiled. "Because I want to kiss you." Jasmine took a deep breath to gather her courage. "Bruno, You see." "What?" "Don't drag it out," he said impatiently, stroking her hair. "I'm pregnant," Jasmine whispered. Bruno's expression changed upon hearing this. "What?" he exclaimed in disbelief. "I'm expecting a child, Bruno." "Your child?" "This can't be happening," Bruno exclaimed. "But it is," Jasmine said. Bruno jumped up from the bench, ran his fingers through his hair, and shook his head, as if refusing to accept what he'd heard. "Are you serious?" he asked, looking Jasmine in the eyes. "Yes," she nodded. "But we're too young to have a child." "We're too young," Bruno exclaimed. "I know," Jasmine replied quietly. "You have to get an abortion," Bruno said firmly. Jasmine looked up at him, her eyes filled with tears. "But I don't want to kill our baby," she whispered in horror. Bruno sat down beside her and took her hand. "We need to finish our studies, get established. It's not the right time to have children. This will ruin our lives, don't you understand?" "I understand everything, Bruno," Jasmine said, tears streaming down her cheeks. "You don't love me." Bruno tried to calm her down. "It's not about that. I'm just thinking about our future." But Jasmine wasn't listening. She pulled her hand away and ran off. The next day, she tearfully told her parents everything. They were furious when they heard the news. "How could you do this?" her father shouted. "We spend our last money on your education, and you go around with boys and bring home a child." Jasmine burst into tears. Her mother stayed silent but looked at her disapprovingly. Her father asked who the father of the child was, but Jasmine just shook her head. "In that case, you need to get rid of the child," he said. "It's not just about your education, but also our family's reputation." "But Dad, I don't want to do that," Jasmine protested. "You'll have to," her father responded harshly. Jasmine cried and ran to her room. She lay down on the bed and closed her eyes. Images flashed before her. She was walking down the street with a stroller, then sitting on a park bench holding a baby. Jasmine realized she didn't want to end the life that was now growing inside her. She decided firmly that she would have the baby and become a mother. She would love and care for the child. Even if the baby wouldn't have a father, grandparents, or family, she would still give it life. Jasmine got up and quietly packed her things into a bag. Then she silently left the house. Her parents were in their room and didn't hear a thing. Jasmine went to Diana's house and asked if she could stay there. Diana and her parents couldn't refuse her. Diana's parents had a fairly large house, so they were able to give Jasmine a small room on the second floor. This arrangement suited her perfectly. She now had a roof over her head and could safely carry her child. Of course, Jasmine stopped going to university and didn't see Bruno. He didn't try to contact her either. Jasmine still hoped for a while that he would find out where she was living, have a change of heart, and come to her with a big bouquet of flowers, but that never happened. Instead, Jasmine found a part-time job writing articles for a blog about femininity and beauty. Her pregnancy progressed easily and calmly, and the 9 months passed quickly and unnoticed. When it was time to give birth, Jasmine went to the maternity hospital with Diana. Fortunately, the birth also went surprisingly smoothly, and she delivered a healthy and beautiful baby. She named her son Manuel and eagerly awaited being discharged so they could go home. Jasmine decided that now her parents would have no choice but to accept their grandchild. In the maternity hospital, Jasmine quickly learned everything she needed to know. She skillfully breastfed Manuel, changed his diapers, rocked him, sang lullabies, and repeatedly kissed the unusual heart-shaped birthmark on his belly. Jasmine felt perfectly at ease in her role as a mother. She had no regrets and didn't even think about contacting Bruno. When they were discharged, Jasmine took a taxi and went to her parents' house with her son. Her father and mother were at home. When they opened the door and saw Jasmine, they couldn't believe their eyes. Her mother reached out towards her daughter and grandson, but her father stopped her. "Let this tramp go back to where she came from," he said angrily. "I don't want to see her in my house." With those words, he slammed the door in front of Jasmine and her son. It took a moment for Jasmine to realize what had happened. Her own father had rejected her. In deep shock, she staggered down the street, clutching her baby tightly. She came to her senses only when she reached a park by a fountain and decided to call Diana. "My parents didn't accept me," she admitted bitterly. "Can I come back to stay with you?" Diana paused for a moment. "Jasmine, I don't want to upset you," she confessed. "But my father has been offered a job abroad, and we've sold the house. We're packing up right now. I'm sorry, my friend. Maybe you should turn to Bruno?" Jasmine nodded and silently hung up. She didn't know what to do. Call Bruno? After all, he was the child's father. Jasmine decided to dial his number, but it was unreachable. She tried again after half an hour, then after an hour, but the result was the same. Most likely, Bruno had changed his number. Jasmine couldn't believe what was happening. She was left on the street with a newborn baby. She didn't know what to do and began simply going door to door in affluent neighborhoods, asking for work. In one house, they responded that they needed a maid. Jasmine said she could handle the job if the homeowners agreed to take her in along with her baby. They accepted, and Jasmine became a maid in a wealthy household. The owners were kind to her, but it was very hard for Jasmine. She had to clean the huge mansion while also taking care of and feeding her baby. She was very tired and worried that she might lose her milk. At night, the baby kept her awake, and Jasmine was constantly pale and exhausted. Several months passed. It became increasingly difficult for Jasmine, and she could no longer manage the cleaning as the homeowners desired. One morning, they told her they no longer needed her services, and Jasmine found herself back on the street. Her baby was teething and constantly crying. Jasmine could barely stand, but she had to look for work and shelter again. This time, she wasn't as lucky. The homeowners immediately sensed that Jasmine couldn't handle the work in her condition. Moreover, the sight of a crying baby scared them away. Evening came. Jasmine was completely desperate. She sat on the porch of a wealthy house, rocking Manuel to sleep. Finally, he fell asleep. In that moment, something clicked in Jasmine's tired mind. She looked at the facade of the mansion and imagined how well Manuel would live in such a house, rather than wandering the indifferent streets with her. These thoughts took hold of Jasmine's consciousness, and without fully realizing what she was doing, she placed the baby on the porch and walked away. Jasmine spent the night on a park bench. When she woke up, her first thought was to feed Manuel, but he wasn't there. She jumped up from the bench, and memories of the previous day washed over her like a wave. Could she really have left her child on the porch? Jasmine rushed back to the wealthy neighborhood but couldn't remember exactly where she had been sitting with Manuel. She knocked on every door, asking desperately if the homeowners had seen her baby. They only shook their heads and quickly closed the doors. Jasmine couldn't find Manuel. In tears, she returned to the park and collapsed onto the same bench, barely conscious. The next morning, she resumed her search, but it was all in vain. Someone called the police, and they took her to the station. There, she told her story, and they promised to help. That night, she stayed in a cheap hostel near the station. An old policeman who had questioned her took pity on her and paid for her stay. He also bought Jasmine dinner, and she was surprised to realize that she hadn't eaten in nearly 2 days. During the night, she woke up constantly from terrible nightmares, dreaming that something awful had happened to Manuel. Jasmine was utterly exhausted, and by morning, she had developed a high fever. Her roommates called an ambulance, and she was taken to the hospital. For a few days, Jasmine was in a daze, and when she came to, she started calling for Manuel. She tried to get up and go look for him, but the doctors wouldn't let her. Now, a nurse always stayed with her. Jasmine was discharged only 2 weeks later when she had fully recovered. Jasmine made one last attempt to return to the wealthy neighborhood, but at the first house, they threatened to call the police again, so she gave up her search. Losing Manuel left a deep wound in Jasmine's heart, but she knew she had to move on. She found a job at a hotel, where she was given a modest room on the top floor. Thus began her new, solitary life. 5 years passed. Jasmine continued to work at the same hotel, which she had come to love. She enjoyed welcoming guests and showing them to their rooms, chatting with them, and listening to their impressions of their trip. She loved preparing breakfast for the guests and answering phone calls. Jasmine's life was very modest but stable and predictable, which, after everything she had been through, seemed perfect to her. During the day, she cleaned rooms, interacted with guests, and washed dishes in the kitchen. In the evenings, she watched TV with the guests and other hotel workers in the common lounge. This was the only entertainment Jasmine allowed herself. One evening, she watched an episode of a new series for the first time. It was a touching comedy about a family living on a small farm. Jasmine liked the charming father, the captivating mother, the cheerful teenage daughter, but most of all, she was drawn to the youngest child. He was only 5 years old, but remarkably smart for his age. When Jasmine first saw the boy on the screen, something stirred in her heart. He seemed familiar and dear to her. She realized that her own son, Manuel, would also be 5 now. In the credits, she read that the boy's name was Benito. From then on, Jasmine eagerly awaited each evening to watch the next episode of the show, and when it ended, she felt an emptiness. It was as if she lived with the characters, who had everything she had ever dreamed of. When the series ended, Jasmine couldn't hold back her tears. It felt like something precious and cherished had been taken from her. Her own life seemed gray and empty. However, a year later, another series featuring little Benito aired. This time, it was an adventure show where the boy, along with his older brother and sister, searched for their parents who had gone missing in the jungle. Watching the series, Jasmine once again felt the same excitement and joy. It was as if colors had returned to her life. Another 4 years passed, during which new series and movies featuring Benito occasionally appeared on the screen. He had become a real star. Now he appeared in commercials and attended various social events. He was interviewed, and these interviews were published in magazines. Benito became a public favorite. Without fully understanding why, Jasmine followed all the news related to the boy. Perhaps she was trying to fill the void that had formed in her when she lost her own son. One morning, as Jasmine was preparing breakfast for the guests, the hotel owner arrived. He waited until the guests had eaten and left for their day, then gathered all the hotel staff in the common lounge. "I'm terribly sorry, but I have some unfortunate news to share. I've decided to sell the hotel and start a new business. Unfortunately, you all will need to find new jobs." Hearing these words, Jasmine couldn't believe her ears. She had worked at the hotel for many years, and it felt like home to her. Now she was back on the street. The young woman barely held back her tears. Gathering her few belongings, she stepped outside and stood there, unsure of where to go. Some instinct led her back to that wealthy neighborhood where she had once left Manuel on a porch. Jasmine stopped in front of one of the grand mansions and gently knocked on the door. She still remembered the threats from the homeowners and didn't want to repeat the old story. However, this time, she was met with a different reaction. Jasmine was now beautiful, well-groomed, and looked healthy and strong. She was wearing a modest yet elegant outfit, a white blouse and beige suit, along with low-heeled sandals. The butler who answered the door told her that they needed a housekeeper, and the young woman gladly agreed. The elderly man escorted her to the homeowner, who was working in his study at the time. He looked up and smiled at the young woman. "Good afternoon, my name is Bernardo." Jasmine smiled in return and introduced herself. Bernardo indicated a chair for her, and she sat down. "Yes, I do need a new housekeeper. Senora Martinez, who had worked in my house for many years, has retired and moved to be with her grandchildren. I am looking for a replacement." Jasmine mentioned her work experience, noting that she had worked as a maid in one of the wealthy homes 10 years ago. "Well, you seem pleasant," Bernardo said openly. "I think I should hire you." Jasmine nodded gratefully. "Oh, I forgot to mention," the homeowner said hastily. "I have a son, and he is 10 years old." Hearing this number, Jasmine flinched but quickly composed herself. "Sometimes you will need to help him with his homework," Bernardo continued. "He is very busy, and he doesn't always have time for school." "Do you have an education?" Jasmine explained that she had attended university but had not completed it. "Yes, of course, I would be happy to help your son," she added. "He is currently at school and should return by 2 o'clock. The driver will bring him home. Please feed him and then make sure he sits down to do his homework." "All right, sir," Jasmine responded and left the homeowner's study. The butler showed her to her new room. It was small but bright and cozy. The room had everything she needed: a fairly wide bed, a spacious wardrobe, a mirror, and a desk. Jasmine liked the floral pattern on the lavender-colored walls. Similar wallpaper was in the room at Diana's house, and the young woman fondly remembered the happy moments of her pregnancy. With a sigh, she began to unpack her belongings. As it approached 2 o'clock, she went down to the kitchen and prepared sandwiches for the homeowner's son. Jasmine was eagerly anticipating meeting the boy. She was glad to be in a house with a child. Perhaps it would help her miss Manuel a little less. Finally, the front door opened, and Jasmine heard a child's voice cheerfully greeting the butler. The young woman hurried into the hall and froze in place. Standing before her was Benito, the very same little actor beloved by the entire country. "But it can't be," Jasmine thought to herself. Yet, it was true. "Hello," Benito said, looking at Jasmine with confusion. "Oh, hello." Jasmine quickly recovered. "I'm sorry, I didn't introduce myself. My name is Jasmine, and I'm the new housekeeper." "Nice to meet you," the boy said with a smile. "I'm Benito. But you might already know me." With these words, he gave Jasmine a sly look. "Yes, I must admit, I've seen the films you're in," Jasmine replied. The boy's eyes lit up. "And how did you like them?" he asked. "I love them," Jasmine admitted. "Oh, thank you," Benito said. "I worked very hard." Jasmine realized that there was no trace of arrogance or pride in the boy. He simply did what he enjoyed. "I've made you some sandwiches," Jasmine said. "They're on the table." "Wow. I love sandwiches. Senora Martinez wouldn't let me eat them. She always made me soup or risotto for lunch." Jasmine just smiled in response. "I can cook those dishes too." "Oh, I wish you could make chips," the boy laughed. Jasmine felt a pleasant sense of connection. She and Benito immediately hit it off. "I think we'll become good friends," she thought. Deep down, Jasmine felt mixed emotions: joy from interacting with the child and the lingering pain from losing her own son. Jasmine was right. She and Benito got along wonderfully. The young woman helped the boy with his homework, cooked for him, ironed his school shirts, and they even went for walks in the park together in the evenings. They talked about various topics and often shared their deepest secrets. The only thing Jasmine never told Benito was about the loss of her son. She didn't want to bring it up out loud. "I dream of having a dog," the boy confessed one day as they walked in the park. "Even a tiny puppy would do." "Does your dad not want to have pets?" Jasmine asked. Benito sighed in response. "He says that I'm never home. I'm either at school or filming. My dad thinks I won't have time for a dog, and it needs care and attention." Jasmine nodded. "Your dad is completely right. I think you can get a dog later. But I know how we can help. We can go to the shelter together and walk the local dogs that don't have owners. They really need someone's love." "That's a wonderful idea," Benito exclaimed. He was so excited that he was ready to run to the dog shelter immediately. Jasmine tried to temper his enthusiasm. "Wait, Benito. First, we need to check with your dad. If he agrees, we'll go to the shelter tomorrow after school." Benito agreed with Jasmine. "You're right. Let's go home and ask him." Mr. Bernardo had no objections. The next day, Jasmine and Benito went to the shelter and chose a pet to take for a walk in the park. It was a sweet dog named Hugo. Benito quickly bonded with Hugo, and the dog bonded with the boy. They walked together twice a week and had a great time. Benito had a dream of one day becoming Hugo's full-time owner. It seemed that Hugo dreamed of the same thing. Jasmine often joined in the games between the boy and Hugo. They ran around the lawn together and played ball. One day, Jasmine awkwardly stepped on her foot and twisted her ankle. She managed to get to the shelter to return Hugo, and then she and Benito took a taxi home. The next morning, her ankle was swollen and red. Upon learning this, Mr. Bernardo called a doctor and gave Jasmine a couple of days off work. The next day, Benito wanted to go to the dog shelter again to take Hugo for a walk. "He's probably missing me already," he told his father. "But I can't go with you," Mr. Bernardo replied. And Jasmine hurt her foot. "You'll have to wait a couple of days until she's fully recovered." "But Dad..." "Don't you understand?" Benito pleaded. "Hugo will think I've abandoned him. I don't think anything serious will happen. He'll wait for you," his father tried to reassure him. But Benito insisted. He was very worried about Hugo. In the end, his father asked the butler to go with the boy. "Just keep a close eye on him, please," Mr. Bernardo said. As he spoke, he felt a sense of unease but dismissed it. The elderly man nodded, and he and Benito left the house. Hours passed, but they did not return. Jasmine, unaware that Benito had gone out with Hugo and the butler, felt an inexplicable sense of worry. She struggled to get out of bed and left her room. The house was quiet and deserted. Jasmine headed to Mr. Bernardo's office and found him there, working on the computer with reading glasses on. "Mr. Bernardo, I'm sorry to bother you," Jasmine began. "I just wanted to know where Benito is. Is he still at school?" "No," Bernardo shook his head. "He went out for a walk with Hugo and our butler. But the shelter is already closed," Jasmine exclaimed, glancing at the clock. Bernardo looked up from the screen. "Are you sure?" he asked. "Absolutely," replied the young woman, her anxiety growing. Bernardo jumped to his feet. "I'm going to look for them," he said. At that moment, they heard the sound of the door slamming shut from downstairs. Someone had entered the house. Bernardo and Jasmine, wincing in pain with each step, rushed downstairs. They saw the out-of-breath butler. He was alone. What happened? "Where is Benito?" Bernardo shouted in fear. "Disaster, sir," the elderly man said in short bursts. "He was playing with Hugo and ran into the street after a ball. A car hit him." Jasmine felt like she was about to faint. She swayed and only didn't fall because Bernardo managed to support her. "Where is the boy?" she whispered. "An ambulance took him away." "He's at the hospital," the butler replied. "We're going there right now," Bernardo said. They left the house and got into his car. Once out of the parking lot, Benito's father drove at maximum speed. Jasmine was terrified for them, but she was even more afraid for Benito. Finally, they reached the hospital, went inside, and the administrator directed them upstairs. They were stopped by a doctor outside the room where Benito was. "Are you the boy's parents?" he asked. "Yes," Bernardo nodded quickly. "I'm afraid I have some bad news. The boy is unconscious. He's in very critical condition." Jasmine gasped and started to cry. Bernardo remained composed. "Doctor, what are the chances?" "At the moment, we're doing everything we can to save the boy's life. All you can do is pray." Bernardo and Jasmine sat on a small couch and prepared to spend a long night there. The young woman continued to cry. She felt the boy's pain as if it were her own and was very afraid of losing him. "It's a good thing there's no press here," Bernardo said quietly. Jasmine didn't respond. She withdrew into herself, focusing on her own feelings. Suddenly, for some inexplicable reason, she felt a strong urge to go into the room and hold the boy's hand. She stood up and, without asking for permission, slipped inside. Bernardo could only watch her in surprise. The room was dimly lit, with various machines beeping. Jasmine slowly approached the motionless Benito. A catheter was attached to his hand. His eyes were tightly closed, and his eyelids didn't move. Jasmine fought back the tears and sat down next to the boy. She took his hand. It was cold. "Benito, hear me," Jasmine whispered. "You have to live." Nothing changed. The boy showed no signs of life. Jasmine sighed and closed her eyes. Unexpectedly, she felt a strong urge to sing. A lullaby she used to sing to her own son came to her mind. The young woman took a deep breath and began to sing. The song seemed to come from the very depths of her heart. Jasmine wasn't aware of what she was doing or how much time had passed. When she finished singing all the lullabies she knew, she opened her eyes and saw the boy's eyelashes fluttering. "Manuel, you're awake," Jasmine said with a gentle voice, completely forgetting where she was. The boy opened his eyes. "Jasmine, is that you?" he whispered and tried to smile. "Yes, it's me, and I'm here," Jasmine said, starting to cry. "You're safe, my boy." "Why did you call me Manuel?" Benito asked. "Did I?" Jasmine was surprised. "I'm sorry. I don't know." At that moment, the doctor and Bernardo entered the room. "He's come to," Benito's father exclaimed. The doctor checked the equipment in astonishment. "It's a miracle," he breathed out, and then, looking at Jasmine, added, "I don't know what you did, but you saved the boy." Jasmine smiled with joy. "His life is no longer in danger. I think he will recover very soon." And so it was. Benito improved every day. One day, Jasmine entered his room with some treats. The boy was sitting in bed without a shirt. He greeted Jasmine happily. As the young woman started to unpack chocolates and fruits, her gaze fell on the boy's bare stomach. Jasmine couldn't believe her eyes. She recognized a birthmark in the shape of a heart. "It's Manuel," she realized, overwhelmed with happiness. "So, I found him after all." "What are you thinking about, Jasmine?" Benito asked, breaking off a piece of his favorite orange chocolate. "Nothing, dear," Jasmine replied tenderly. "I often think about Hugo," Benito confessed. "When you're better, you'll definitely see him," the young woman promised and added sternly, "but no more balls." "I swear," Benito promised. When Jasmine returned home, she went up to Bernardo's office and asked him about Benito's mother. He never had one, the man admitted. He had grown accustomed to Jasmine and trusted her. Bernardo told her the truth. 10 years ago, he had found Benito on the doorstep of his house and raised him as his own son. Jasmine cried. She confessed to Bernardo that it was she who had left the boy there. "I'm his mother," Jasmine said, and told Bernardo the whole story. He listened attentively. "Amazing," he said. "Now I understand what brought Benito back to life. It was the power of a mother's love." Jasmine just smiled in response. She continued to work in Mr. Bernardo's house, but gradually their relationship went beyond professional bounds. Jasmine and Bernardo became truly close, and one day they realized they could no longer live without each other. They decided to marry, and Benito had a mother once again. Dear viewers, if you enjoyed the story, please support the video by liking it and leaving a comment. Thank you very much.